What's up? What's up? Welcome to GC Live here at Market on Main, downtown Columbia. I am Wes Mitchell, and as promised, joined by Collyn Taylor. Officially this time. The other time it was sort of
spur of the moment.
Spur of the moment. Joining us here, I got to say, for the first time since we've been doing the show here at Market on Main, it is a beautiful day in downtown Columbia. So whether you come see us today or whether you come out on Saturday for the watch party, which you see the outstanding outdoor seating area right now behind us, and that way is a 23-foot LED screen that you have to see to experience, to really just get it. And that's where Collyn Taylor's Cubs will be losing their series in about an hour.
I'm not even going to dispute you on that one.
So, and which means I'm going to win my bet with Collyn. But again, all right, so I'm Wes Mitchell. He's Collyn Taylor. We are brought to you by Affordable Medical, USA.com, home of the Game Day Chair. We'll tell you a little bit more about them later on. But once again, because we're live, I'm going to need you guys to give us some feedback. If you ever can't hear us, you can't see us, if you ever have any issues, I will still be able to – I may be squinting a bit, but I will be able to see your comments. So send them our way, and we'll be taking your questions throughout the show. But Collyn and Chris Clark, by the way, he's at home. He's in his office. He will be joining us remotely probably around 1:15, probably for about 15, 20 minutes to give his final take on the game as well. I see everybody getting in line. We got Believe 57, Kyle Jackson, Gamecock Russ, Carolina Titan, Hope, Nathan Hogue, Mark, Keith Gillespie. So a bunch of our normal listeners and watchers are already on here. Good to see you guys. Collyn show last night, always sort of the final, at least public reaction to the game by Will Muschamp. First and foremost, update on Izzy Mukuamu. I know people have been paying attention to Twitter or GamecockCentral.com. Already know this, but tell everybody the latest injury report, but more importantly, what that injury report means for South Carolina going into this matchup with number 3 Florida at the Swamp on Saturday at noon.
Yeah, so Muschamp said, obviously, on his call-in show that Izzy's going to play. They're preparing for him to play, coming off that groin injury, heading against Tennessee. So it's huge for South Carolina when you have a guy that long, that big against a guy like Kyle Pitts, who they're going to need to cover. It's huge, and Florida's got playmakers all over the field. So getting him back just with his length and his experience going up against guys like a Kyle Pitts, a Kadarius Toney, it's going to be huge. And Sherrod Green obviously out for 4 to 6 weeks with that fractured hip. Muschamp compared it some to the Tua injury from last year, and said that he updated Jamar Brown a little bit. Said that he's kind of still day-to-day, kind of doubtful. The way he kind of described it, I don't feel confident he's going to play, but he said they're definitely going to be back next week for that Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, and I think with Jamar, man, even if he's getting close, you probably don't throw him out there, in the Swamp, number 3 team in the country, a game against an outstanding passing attack, and one where we've seen Jamar, if he's playing that dime spot, he's going to be counted on in coverage to match up a lot, I think, particularly maybe even with a Pitts if he was on the field. So that's a lot to throw at a young guy. He did play some last year, didn't play a ton. So, I mean, just reading between the lines from what Muschamp said, maybe if he's close, he gets out there for a little bit, but it doesn't seem like it. And I don't know, even if he's just almost there, I don't know if you really risk that to throw a guy into the fire when you could just give him one more week and have him completely 100% ready to go for Vanderbilt the next week. So, but all in all, I would say a positive report on injuries for South Carolina. Izzy being the big one that South Carolina needed to get back. And I know people have maybe piled on Cam Smith a little bit, and I've said, look, we can't really pile on this kid. That really was his first SEC playing time where he's out there trying to cover guys downfield. And he got in some games last year, mostly special teams or blowouts. Cam Smith is going to be fine. But as far as throwing him right back out there against a really good, again, passing attack, Dan Mullen, I think one of the best to do it in the SEC at scheming up offenses, and some really talented Florida weapons. Just much more ideal for an experienced guy, someone that's played since really the latter part of their freshman year, played all last year, having Izzy Mukwamu to line up across, opposite of J.C. Horn. Much more ideal situation for South Carolina in this matchup. So, man, I think the matchup everybody has talked about all week long is what does South Carolina do with Kyle Pitts?
Yeah.
And you look, he's 6'6", he's like 240, 250 pounds, is your, I would say, prototypical modern NFL tight end.
Yeah.
Still not, he's not going to blow anybody away with his blocking ability. He's big enough to get in the way of people, probably has improved that part of his game. But let's be honest, he's on the field. He's going to be a first-round draft pick because of the mismatch he provides in the passing game. So I know you wrote your article. It's on GamecockCentral.com talking about how does South Carolina defend Pitts. What are your initial impressions? We saw him last year.
Right.
I think he was coming into his own at that point. What are your initial impressions just listening to the Carolina players talk, listening to Muschamp talk, and what you've seen with your own eyes of this matchup for South Carolina?
I think they're going to throw a lot at him. I think that I asked Jamie Robinson kind of how they were trying to mirror Pitts to begin with, and he said that they're going to match up. I think Kevion Mullins was doing a little bit of scout teamwork with him, but Kevion Mullins is only 6'1", 240. Same weight, different height. And I think you're going to – if you're South Carolina and you're Travaris Robinson or Will Muschamp, you got to try and throw as much at him as possible. Whether that's Jamie Robinson at the nickel, whether that's Brad Johnson at the Sam, whether that's J.C. Horn sliding him into nickel some. So you're going to have to throw a lot at him so we can't get comfortable with how one guy guards him or how one guy's shading him. And so Florida's not comfortable. And I think a big part of what South Carolina's going to have to do is have to get pressure with four. You're going to have to be able to pressure Kyle Trask to the point where he's not comfortable and Kyle Pitts doesn't have a lot of time to get open against guys that are either bigger than him or shorter than him. And that's a big thing if you're South Carolina, trying to make Kyle Pitts uncomfortable and pressure and in fact, Kyle Trask in the pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got our first guest, by the way, over there. Our buddy Mike Uva has joined us from Watch Fox. He is chilling over there. Hopefully he'll come over and say hello in a second. But
is he more famous than us at this point?
Come on. I don't know. There's a worker here that probably thinks that he is because she's dating him. But I don't know. We'll have to find out. Hopefully, at least he's going to come over here and say hello.
I give him a little too much grief sometimes.
I would imagine. But so maybe. I don't know what happened there. We're going to start over with that thought. There should be a little delay from what y'all see as you see all the comments coming out. No mic, no mic, no mic. Can you hear us now? Do you have us back? I need some thumbs up.
Right,
okay, awesome. All right, we're good. Sorry about that. Again, we are live, Market on Main. When you're out, sometimes things go out on you. So I appreciate the feedback there. Y'all have to keep us straight. Okay, Kyle Pitts. So I'll go back, YouTube, South Carolina versus Florida 2019. Beauty of that is you can go 5 seconds at the time.
It's beautiful.
I went through the entire South Carolina football game last year in literally under 15 minutes, just looking at who was across from Kyle Pitts. So number 84, he's a big dude. Very easy to spot pre-snap. I went through, I watched every single snap of Florida offensively. First thing I noticed, this man does not come off the field. So that's something for them. Not really a lot of two tight end stuff, but he's going to be on the field.
Yeah.
They ran a little bit of two tights last year. if you look at their PFF snap counts from the game against Ole Miss, a little bit of two tights. For the most part, that's not what they do. But so I watched Kyle Pitts, right? The first thing you notice about him, other than the size, athletic ability, he's lining up, split out.
Dude, they're doing a lot with him.
Yeah, he's lining up, split out in a bunch formation as sort of that lead guy who gives you a big blocker on the edge sometimes. He's lined up. A lot of times they'll put trips to one side and then put him as the lone. They'll isolate him basically on the completely other side of the formation. They'll line him up actually as a true inline tight end, or they'll line him up sort of in that little H-back role where he's in the box like a tight end, but is sort of behind offset, line, off the line. So point being, 84 is not going to line up back-to-back in the same spot very often. They're going to move him around. Well, South Carolina, traditionally, they're not really a follow-you defense. Like, they're not going to say one guy is going to cover this kid, man up, and follow him. What I saw last year and what I imagine we will see this year is they had multiple guys. Now, one thing they never did that I saw, they almost never just left a linebacker alone covering Pitts. Even when they had a certain coverage called where Pitts was matched up with a linebacker, they would have the buck or the defensive end chip Pitts basically off the line of scrimmage to sort of slow him up out of his route, first and foremost. A lot of times the linebacker, or the safety, because South Carolina's going to play those single high safety defenses. Well, whatever safety was not back deep in coverage, a lot of times is left to play man coverage when they're in man with Kyle Pitts. So for South Carolina, that's either R.J. Roderick or Shiloh Sanders. Now, when they split Pitts all the way out, then is when he was picked up by an Izzy Mukwamu, by a J.C. Horn out on the edge. When he's out on the edge, they treated him just like a wide receiver. So essentially, if you're South Carolina, I think you have Pitts in mind at all times. Right. You're focused on him, but you don't completely throw away every other aspect of your defense by saying we're going to go just double team this guy and leave everybody else left, in one-on-one coverage, because then you basically cut off. What's the phrase? You cut off your face to spite your foot. Yeah, like
cut off your nose to spite your foot.
Yeah, cut off your nose, spite your face. Yeah. They're not going to do that, because then I think they'll get hammered by these other receivers, because they do have good other receivers. So point being, you're a statistical guy, man. If you look back, Pitts didn't kill South Carolina last year. And as far as SEC games for Kyle Pitts, South Carolina held him to less yardage last year than any other SEC team. There were some other games where Florida was up big, and I'm assuming didn't need Pitts against some out-of-conference teams that he had less yardage. But as far as matchups against SEC teams, South Carolina held Pitts, I think it was 5 catches for under 40 yards last year.
Because they have the guys that can go on one-on-one with them. You have a J.C. Horn, you have a Israel Mukwamu, a Jamie Robinson, guys that can win in one-on-one coverage. The only problem you find is when you match up with a guy like when he's matched up with maybe a linebacker, Ernest Jones when they're in nickel, or Sherrod Green last year, now probably a Damani Staley or Brad Johnson. That's when those guys kind of have the matchup problems where you need to either bracket him with a safety, chip him at the line of scrimmage, or do something like that. So getting Pitts into a situation where he's matched up with a J.C. Horn and Israel Mukwamu, Jamie Robinson, your top 3 guys in the secondary, I think is going to be huge. And there might be ways you can do it if you're South Carolina. Will Muschamp is obviously much smarter than I am when it comes to defense. Travis Robinson, much smarter than I am when it comes to defense. So there are ways you can probably scheme it up to where you can get Kyle Pitts on the matchup you want, whether that's showing a look and then having them motion out from it to get you kind of in the look that you want to get into so you feel good about that one-on-one matchup.
Yes, I think that's clearly something to watch. But what the other receivers for Florida do as well, you can't lose sight of those guys, because they do have some really good other players. Yeah. Again, we're at Market on Main. Collyn has gotten hooked up here with a burger, which he has completely plain. which we won't really talk about that. I got the turkey and bacon and avocado on some toast, and we both got truffle fries, and they both look and sound amazing. And we are going to be joined now by our buddy Chris Clark, who did not want to come hang out with us today, but he is hanging out at his office. Let's bring in Chris now if we can. Chris, what's up, man?
What's up, guys? I've been checking out your food. I'm jealous of the atmosphere there at Market on Main. It looks really fun. Collyn, your food takes remain bad. Do not eat a plain burger next time.
I've been eating a plain burger for about 25 years now. So
really? Okay.
That explains a lot, I think. So, Chris, I mean, you and I have talked about the game all week long.
Yep.
Where's your head right now? I mean, you heard most, I think, of what we were saying about Pitts and that matchup. Where's your head? Are you ready to possibly give us a prediction about how you think this game is going to play out? Maybe not a score, but where's your feel right now? The hay is sort of in the barn at this point. The matchup is happening less than 24 hours from now. Where's your head at on how South Carolina matches up with this Gator team? Is 17.5 a fair line? Are these teams that far apart, or do you think it's potentially closer?
I think that line's pretty fair. I was looking over some of the lines yesterday, and I think it was 17.5, 18, depending on who you're looking at. With an over-under, if I'm not mistaken, of about 57.5. So if you sort of take that math from Vegas, it's, a 38-20 game, a 37-20 game, a 38-21, whatever it may be. And would that be a shocking outcome at all, given what we know about these teams, which we still got a lot to learn, we think, about both of them? Yeah, for sure. I don't think that's a shocking outcome at all if that's how it plays out. I go back to this. If South Carolina's going to pull an upset here, which it would be. This is a good football team. They're going to play on the road. They've still got some question marks, some things they've got to clean up defensively against a more dynamic offensive football team than they faced last week, against a defense that didn't have a very good week one showing, but we know has some athleticism and can cause you some issues. South Carolina's got some questions to answer offensively too. So it'd be hard to roll into week two with, again, limited sample size on both these teams in 2020, but it'd be hard to roll in and predict an upset. Would it be a shock if South Carolina played well, got on the plus side of the turnover margin and came away with a huge upset? It wouldn't be a shock, but, it's not something I don't think I would pick at this juncture. But I think it's a really compelling game, and I think it's one that South Carolina has a chance, to win if they can really go turn in a better performance than in week one.
Yeah, I guess kind of want to talk, too, a little bit about South Carolina's offense. Obviously, they kind of clicked a little bit more in the second half than they did in the first against Tennessee. What are you kind of expecting from Collyn Hale and Mike Bobo and the tweaks that you're going to see from South Carolina on game day?
It seemed like in the first half of that Tennessee game, maybe South Carolina was sort of feeling its way through the game. First drive obviously went well. I think it was well called. It was well executed, and that's why South Carolina went right down and scored. Mike Bobo, and this was relayed by Will Muschamp, Mike Bobo thought after halftime, halftime adjustments, that's a big thing that we all discussed really the past two seasons at South Carolina, went into the locker room and felt like they needed to open it up more in that game. And then reviewing the tape from the Tennessee game as a whole, felt like they should have opened it up a little bit earlier, taken some more downfield shots, called some more downfield routes. And so seems like maybe that's the route they're gonna go. I mean, obviously scheming up Shi Smith and what you can do there is going to be a storyline to watch. The running game is going to be a storyline, but can they protect Collyn Hill enough to go take some deep shots in this game and maybe loosen up that Florida defense like they did Tennessee? This Florida defense, they have some younger pieces up front, but a lot of talent. They got some talented guys when you talk about Gervon Dexter and Brenton Cox. There's some linebackers that can run, some DBs that can run. So can they loosen up for it a little bit by hitting some big plays? I think that's going to be the question. Again, biggest thing for me offensively, can't go down there and turn it over. They're going to have to come out on the plus side turnover margin-wise in this game.
They don't know the entire story.
Chris, there was a question on our board in the thread about GC Live today. You may be able to see it. I'm struggling to see it from our distance right now. But essentially was asking why did we not see South Carolina open it up a little bit more in the first half, and Drew just mentioned it on YouTube as well. That I believe Drew was also the poster who asked about it. And I do think it is a valid point, a valid thought, because I think you were sitting at home or sitting in the stadium, probably most people were saying, when are they going to stretch the field? And I remember Bobo even talking a pretty good bit this offseason about quarterback play last year, and he was talking about the average yards per completion last year and it not being near what it needed to be, right? So I think there was a little shock that South Carolina didn't try to threaten the, downfield aspect a little bit more. Now, you can't fault their first drive. Their first drive was outstanding. Yeah. After that, obviously there were some struggles. And, guys, I think it is important to remember sometimes you get into the play-to-play feel of a game and you're just dialed into what are we calling next? What do we think they're going to do? What's the best play for this down and distance? And I don't want to say you forget because that makes it sound like
you're not doing your job,
really negative.
Yeah.
But you only have so many drives in one half. And sometimes you get so dialed in, you sort of have to use halftime, I think, to take a step back and say, what do we need to do? And then you're like, we haven't thrown the ball down the field. And maybe they had some stuff dialed up at some point and the ball doesn't get out, right? So I think, Chris, that will be an emphasis moving forward. One thing Muschamp even mentioned, there was still a filling out process for how these players are going to respond being in Bobo's offense. He's still learning. You can see guys in practice all you want. He's still learning what these guys have on game day, right? So I do think there was sort of some first game aspects there. But certainly moving forward, I think getting the ball down the field, even if it's not successful, just forcing defensive backs and linebackers, for that matter, to respect the downfield passing game has to be a part of what South Carolina does offensively.
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there, a lot of really good points. This is a really good question, too. So to start with what you said, Wes, Will Muschamp talked about that the other day, and that South Carolina's got to find both some plays and some players that can at least threaten to stretch the field vertically. We can talk about shot plays and executing some deep balls and threatening the defense vertically all we want, but you got to dial those plays up, which they did a little bit more in the second half by design. And you got to have some guys that are going to run them. When you're running your shorter routes, even if you're not getting the ball, are you running the route 100%? If you're running your deep routes, are you threatening the defense? Because if not, these defensive backs, these guys at Florida who are, a lot of 4-star type guys, they're going to just sit on the routes. They're going to be physical with you, and you're not really going to have a chance. So that's first and foremost. Yeah, the halftime adjustments, I think you can look at it in both ways. You look at, say, the 2018 South Carolina-Florida game. South Carolina came right out of the gate hot. They had a really good plan offensively, right? Defensively, they played well early, and then it fell off a cliff the latter part of the second half. They scored 10 points in the third quarter, but after that, it just completely fell off where the defense fell apart, and then they weren't doing anything. So you can look at it the opposite way, even of what the question was. Why didn't they adjust then? Okay, even though they came in with a good plan. Well, sometimes you come in with a plan that's working a little bit or it's not really working. And like you said, Wes, it is tough. It's live bullets flying in a game. When you get, when you're punting, then your defense is on the field. Maybe you've got a sequence of 3 to 4 plays, and then you're ready to call the next play. You got to remember that they've got guys up in the booth and on the sideline. They're gathering data. And so when everybody comes together at halftime, you've got a little bit more of a complete picture of, hey, how many times is Florida in this? What are they doing against this? You can relay that some during the game, but it's very hard to do during a drive or even in between drives. So you get a better picture there, sort of a total picture, and then you have time to step back a little and say, what do we need to do to adjust here? because you're going in that first half and you sort of got not even necessarily a script, but you got an idea of how you want to attack. You can make some tweaks here and there. Muschamp mentioned that on the defensive side of the ball the other night. And talking about Tennessee not adjusting to bracketing Shi Smith. It's hard to do that in a game situation, even after halftime sometimes. They expect to see more of that. So I think it's basically what you said, I think, there, Wes, and that you just need some more time to gather the data, to step back, to make sure that your eyes aren't deceiving you and that you have a complete picture of how they're defending you.
You know, Chris, I don't know who asked that question about Shi Smith in the press conference. He does sound like a really smart journalist, though. I have to say so myself.
That's right.
But we had a question on there about Luke Doty, and I know you had, I think, Xavier Legette, Shi Smith, and Nick Muse combined for 18 of Collyn Hill's 29 completions, or 25 completions, and I want to say 270 of his 290 yards, or some, a big statistic like that. What are you expecting Florida to do to kind of take Shi Smith out of the game? And what guys are you looking at, whether that's a Luke Doty, a Dakereon Joyner, a Rico Powers, a Jakari Caldwell, a Josh Vann, as a guy that can step up and take some of the slack off an offense that needs to produce on Saturday?
So I think there's a couple things for it. I mean, number one, Mike Bobo has proven during his career that if he's got a horse that's hot, he's going to ride the horse. And so whether that's at Georgia where he had Todd Gurley, you give the ball to Todd Gurley. You don't need to overthink it. If you got a 3rd and 1, you're giving the ball to Todd Gurley and you let him go run and break 10 tackles and run 80 yards. Same thing at receiver. And so that's what he did with Shi Smith against Tennessee. It was a smart plan, and he schemed up some things, even though everybody on the field knew it, to be able to get him open. So the first part of it is, I think, Florida obviously is going to know. They're going to be trying to pressure Collyn Hill up front because he's not as mobile. So Mike Bobo and his staff will have to come up with some curveballs from a schematic standpoint to protect, to get Shi loose. If he goes through this game with a very limited impact, and South Carolina's offense is going to have a very limited impact, I think. Just call it like it is. And so they'll have to scheme him up. But the other guys, they've got to, I think Florida's going to probably try some brackets on Shi Smith. I mean, they're probably not going to be out there doubling him every time, but maybe sometimes they got a safety over. Maybe sometimes they're zoning it up, blitzing, giving some different looks and doing some different things. But these other guys, I mean, they're searching for, whoever it is, a Van, a Joyner, a Legette, anyone to be more of a vertical threat, to play fast, and to threaten the defense. And to some degree, we don't know who that's going to be, but it's a question that they've got to get answered. And I think the bottom line is just, do they have time up front? Does Collyn Hill have time? And can some of these other guys go out there and execute the plays that are called and go get open? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Well, I think to that point, Chris, we can talk about scheming guys open, and there were some comments on the board, which I get. Play calling does matter, but at some point, guys just have to defeat man coverage.
Yeah, it's easy to call plays for a guy that runs a 4.4 that's 220 pounds.
Yeah, and I mean, you can call man beaters and routes that can defeat that, but I think we sit here a lot of times, and if your team's defense is in zone, and we're as guilty as anybody, media, fans, and a team's picking apart the zone, and we just say, why don't you play man coverage? And we expect Cam Smith, for example, to be able to stick directly on that guy in man coverage and hold up every single play of a game. Yet then we turn around and offensively we say, well, if they're calling plays to get that guy open, why can't he get open? Right. Well, if they're in man coverage, even if you have man-beating routes, at some point it just becomes literally man versus man. Which guy can separate from the other? Which guy has a knack for getting open? And I think, not to pick on Dakereon Joyner, because we know what Joyner can do in the open field with the ball in his hands. But one thing he does not have a lot of experience doing is breaking away from a defender, who's in his face, who is trained to stay with him as far as SEC competition goes. So I don't think you give up on Joyner after like one game as a true wide receiver. But some as Muschamp said yesterday, some of it ultimately is go get open, and there's only so much of that you can do from the sideline. So whether it is Joyner, whether it's Josh Vann, whether it's Luke Doty, whether it's Rico Powers, ultimately, yes, there are things you can do to call plays. But the reason they're throwing the ball to Shi Smith 15 times last week, which, by the way, was the highest for any receiver in the SEC as far as number of targets, is because guess what? Shi Smith was getting open. Even the incompletions to Shi saved maybe a couple of them. The deep ball that I thought Shi had a chance to make a really nice play on, if he hauls it in, he's still got room there, to make a play. So the reason that Shi's getting the ball, and we can harp on Nick Muse's one drop all we want, but Muse made a sliding catch. He made a sort of diving catch. Nick Muse was open, I would say, pretty much all night long. So the reason those guys are getting the ball right now is because, yes, they're being emphasized by Mike Bobo, but they're wide open. They're open. Like, that's ultimately what it comes down to. So I think it's easy to be here, sit here and be like, well, they have to get the ball to other people. Well, at some point, it comes down to the players on the field going out and making some plays. Guys, I'm going to be curious to see what happens moving forward as far as young players stepping in, getting more opportunities. I'm not just talking about a Luke Doty, a Rico Powers as the year goes on, a Kevion Mullins, who Muschamp says just needs to be more consistent, but probably is one of your best potential matchups on the field. And my guy Eric Shaw, who I've been calling for since the start of the year. Collyn doesn't read my stuff because he thought it was a surprise that Eric Shaw was getting highlighted by Will Muschamp. But these young, talented guys that I think you have two things going right here right now. You have some veteran guys, and I think it's not fair to put Joyner in the veteran category because he hasn't played receiver. But just as far as age goes, you have some older guys. But then I think you do, when it comes to these younger kids, Mullins, Shaw at tight end, Rico Powers, Luke Doty, I think you do have some athleticism there where you have people who can probably in time get open, but then you're on the other end of it. How long does it take them to get comfortable?
Right.
Because as we saw, one tipped ball, one wrong route, one mistake in this league can be a pick six. So it's easy for us as fans, as media, to be like, you have to play the young guy. But then we're the same ones saying, why didn't that guy run the right route?
Right.
If he messes it up, there's a reason.
Yeah. Well, for every Jakarian Joyner or Luke Doty, whoever you play, there is a Henry 2020 or however you say his name, a middle linebacker that's played for 3 years or played for 2 years. And the guys that are on the other team, I think we forget sometimes are on scholarship too, and they're pretty good. And, it's hard to ask Jakarian Joyner to go out there and compete against a Bryce Thompson or an Alante. I don't know, Alante, who's their other corner, who are two really good corners that have been playing together for a while. Just like it would be hard to go out and ask a freshman to go up against J.C. Horn and Israel Mukuamu because these guys have had so many snaps together. So it's going to take some time for a Joyner, for a Luke Doty, for Rico Powers. It's very rare in the SEC to see a guy come in day one and catch 10 passes for 140 yards. Shi Smith didn't do it. Brian Edwards did it because he was forced to do it because they didn't have any other receivers at the position.
And he was just special.
A freak of nature.
He caught a ball in every game he ever played in, I think, in college.
It's insane. And so Brian Edwards don't grow on trees. It's very hard to find a guy that from day one can come in and just be an impact receiver. And that takes time. Now, it's different for each player. I mean, one guy could come in and it takes 2 games. Another guy it takes 6. Another guy could take an entire year. So I think patience is key. I know as football fans, you don't want to hear that. Be patient, especially in year 5 of a program. But for some of these young guys, it's going to take some time to really kind of come on. And that's why you need Shi Smith. That's why you need Nick Muse and Xavier Legette to really come on and carry that team while some of these younger guys get their feet wet.
And football is a developmental game.
That's the I in the Muschamp bingo. That's I in Muschamp bingo there.
All right, let's go back to Chris Clark. Hopefully he's not falling asleep. I think he's dozing off there. Chris, tell us about the game day chair, and our friends at AffordableMedicalUSA.com.
The game day chair. If you're on YouTube or other streaming options up in the top left, that is the luxurious and comfortable game day chair. So as you're at home watching football, including the Gamecocks tomorrow, along with your comfortable fridge, your AC or your heat now is probably what you need. Make sure you got the game day chair. Go to AffordableMedicalUSA.com and search for the Maxi Comfort with Twilight. Twilight is the zero gravity lay down position technology, power pillow, lumbar support, super comfortable, super roomy chair. Also, if you're on YouTube, go down to our description at the bottom of the video and you can check out the link to the game day chair. We appreciate AffordableMedicalUSA.com, Affordable Medical Equipment, and their support of the show. And Wes actually saw today, guys, Chris, the owner of Affordable Medical Equipment, is working on his new shop. It's coming along. So at some point soon, we're going to be able to go there. And I think we should get maybe 2 game day chairs and just do the show in it, 2 or 3. And that's really going to drum the interest up, I think. So I'm looking forward to doing that soon.
Well, I mean, if we're really going to be able to tell people about the game day chair, we probably need to be sitting in the game day chair. So, Chris, if you're watching, hook it up, my man. But, all right, Chris, we're going to let you get out of here shortly, but what's your final? And I don't know, it's an early game. We may hop on at some point tomorrow if we can. What's your final take on the game?
Yeah, so, I mean, I go back to this key, and that is turnover margin. I mean, it's how South Carolina scored an upset over a top 5 opponent last year. You look at that Georgia game.
And it's hot.
Lots of questions in there. And, South Carolina won the turnover battle 4-0, including a pick 6. And, Georgia turned the ball over 4 times. South Carolina did not. Still went to overtime, still a 3-point game. Still came right down to the wire. So, obviously a different opponent, different game, different offensive coordinator for South Carolina. But some similar questions in that they got to go play a really talented team on the road, a team who's playing really well offensively. South Carolina has, last season played Trask better, I think, than a lot of other people. But they put up over 600 yards and a bunch of points against Ole Miss week 1. There are some potential areas that South Carolina can exploit on the Gators defense, but can they put together consistent performance and do that? I think turnover margin is the biggest key for their potential to score an upset tomorrow.
All right, that's Chris Clark. Chris, we're going to let you get out of here, man. Wish you were here, but we'll see you soon, okay, man?
Thanks, guys. You enjoy yourself out there at Market on Main.
We shall do it. Welcome back. We are here at Market on Main. Trying to get Uva over here, but he's ignoring us. I think he's too good for us.
He sounds about right. He gives off the air of arrogance and hubris.
Yeah, food was great, man. How was your plain A burger?
You know what? You give me grief all the time about my plain food takes. I like to enjoy the food at its base level. If I can enjoy meat, cheese, and bread, that means it's a good burger.
Okay, so it at least does have
yes
your seal of approval.
Yes.
All right, man. So we're sort of getting to the point where I feel like we've broken this game down from every side.
Conceivable angle at this point.
Yes. Yeah. We have plenty. Apparently, we've lost audio again. That may just be a Willie Brown problem. I don't know. Can y'all hear us right now? I'll give it a second. There's a delay. Again, I'm really hoping that my computer does not overheat. My phone's already in overheat mode.
It's close.
From sitting on the table. I need y'all to give us a thumbs up that you can hear.
All right.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, all right, back to what I was saying. Game has been broken down from every – there he is. You going to come join us on the live stream, man?
I heard my name, so I feel like I'm proud of you for getting the salad there, bud.
All right, we're joined by a special guest, not a planned guest, but still a special guest.
Columbia legend.
This was a surprise for me. I was just coming for lunch.
Yeah.
You didn't come to see us?
Oh, this is the reason I came. Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's better. All right, Mike. This is Mike Uva. Watch Fox. We can get Collyn to slide his stuff.
Everything out.
What you got there, man? A little eating
steak
good?
salad, man.
Okay, so protein with your healthy eating.
was going to go to the gym before we shoot some high school football games tonight. So did a little specialty tape that's going to be airing on Sunday. So we had some time. Came on out.
So Mike Uva, watch Fox. You can follow him on Twitter. What's your Twitter?
Mike_UVA.
Say underscore again.
Underscore.
Mike _UVA.
It doesn't matter how long I'm in the South. It's always going to be,
The thick Boston.
Mocky Mock and the Funky Bunch.
Yeah.
You're always going to hear
I like it.
Dude, you're a Market on Main legend, right? Like you're here pretty often, I feel like.
I'm a Village Idiot guy, but it's been closed the last couple months. So now, I'm always going to be loyal to Brian Glenn.
Okay.
But Market is, there's not another setup like this in the area.
23-foot.
Got the big Jumbotron. Unfortunately, we saw how things played out for that USC game last week, but I watched it here at the end of it after we got off air, and, even with socially distanced going on, it was a good-sized crowd and pretty good way to watch the game.
So you're not going to the game. I know everything's a little bit different this year.
Yeah.
You watching from home tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay. I know you, like us, you've been there for all the Zoom press conferences. We all watched South Carolina, Florida. The last 2 years, really, games that were very winnable for South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
What's your takeaway going into this game? We've been talking about keys, things to watch, matchups to watch, so you can take it wherever you want. But what has been maybe your key couple of things you've looked at going into this game?
I think just being able to capitalize on opportunities. And I think back to this Tennessee game this past week. I know we're talking about the Florida games, especially down in Gainesville the last couple of years. But I just think back to you score that opening drive, you have all the momentum, pull them to a 3-and-out, they screw up their punt, and you're in plus territory, and you just can't capitalize. And that's just kind of been something South Carolina struggled with. They couldn't even get a field goal. Even if they get a field goal, just think of that momentum. So, you look at a Florida team who offensively, we know how good they are, but defensively last week, they gave up over 600 yards.
Yeah.
And if this USC offense does take chances to stretch the field early in the game, like we saw in the second half, if your defense can just come up with some opportunities to stop, you're going to have to just be able to capitalize on those opportunities in terms of being able to get field goals and scoring in the red zone, just areas that South Carolina the last couple of years have struggled with.
I think, for one, we're all guilty. At least I am. I think I look at Florida, and I sort of look at it as like a continuation from last year. We only have one game of sort of things to go off of for both these teams. And I think for Florida and unfortunately for South Carolina, a lot of fans feel like that game last week was just a continuation from last year, and which in some ways maybe is fair. Right. In some ways maybe isn't, because everybody has a new team this year. We're all assuming based on what we saw last year that this Florida offense is still really good. Now, I think the other side of it is this is an Ole Miss defense that has a lot of question marks that Florida took advantage of them, don't get me wrong. And then an Ole Miss offense that we think is pretty good, but really had some big plays. And if they could have stayed on the field, or the other side actually gotten off the field on some third downs, maybe that's a little bit closer game. So I think Florida is really good offensively. I think they're probably a little better defensively than they showed against Ole Miss, but we also don't know any of that yet. So I think there's sort of, I've seen from the fan base a little bit, a lot of people are sort of just like, South Carolina's not winning this game. Like, I'm going to enjoy the game. I'm going to maybe have some drinks with my friends, but I'm not expecting anything good to happen for Carolina. But I look at it like, let's at least let these games start to play out, see how much of what went wrong for South Carolina is correctable for this team, as opposed to just saying, oh, this is the same team as last year, because it's not.
And Eric Kimry mentioned this before, and any coach will tell you this. The biggest difference you'll see in improvement, and I know it sounds cliche to say, but it's the truth, is week 1 to week 2, especially in a year like this year where things were just so different. I think if you're trying to find any positives, yes, there were a lot of explosive plays that Tennessee had against that secondary last week against USC. Those things can be correct. They were I try to take the positives away. They were 111 on third downs in terms of being able to get Tennessee off the field. That's good. They had 11 missed tackles. I know it seems like at times it was more, but my point being is the things that USC struggled with last week defensively, they can correct that. But of course, you're going up against arguably the best tight end in the country this week. So if you can somehow slow him down, you don't have to take him out of the game completely. If you can slow him down, that's the nucleus of that offense. And I was talking to Collyn about that yesterday. If you can just slow him down, that's going to change the entire complexion of how Florida is trying to operate.
And you have to be efficient, I think, too, offensively. I mean, you have to be able to, total yards don't mean a whole lot in today's football, but if you're averaging, 5.5, 6 yards per play, that feels really, really good because you're able to get first down, sustain drives. I'm not a big time of possession guy, but if you keep Florida's offense off the field, Kyle Pitts can't hurt you, and Kyle Trask can't hurt you. And if you're more efficient and you're scoring points doing that in the red zone on third down, then you feel pretty good. Like if you come in and tell me that South Carolina was about 60% on third down, average 5.5 yards per play, I think that game, I don't know if South Carolina wins it, but I think it's at least closer than what the spread is.
And you guys have seen over the last couple of years, but I can just go back to when I covered Dan Mullen when I was in Mississippi State. He's the type of guy that if you keep that offense off the field and he gets back out there and he feels like he just has been kind of cooped up, he's going to try to take shots downfield, and that's when things kind of blow up in their face. So if you're able to, like you said, time possession, I'm not a huge, a fan of it, or in terms of I think this is like make or break. But if you can keep a Dan Mullen offense off the field, when he comes on the field back again, he's going to try to force something down the field. And like we saw last year with Georgia, if you can make them pay, anything can happen in this game.
I think time of possession generally, especially modern days, is overrated for most teams. But I think that's more for those teams that are more trying to get as many plays off as possible.
Yep.
They're going hurry up. And a lot of times they have, let's be honest, really good, proven offenses, which is something right now South Carolina does not have. So I think for South Carolina, you look at last year and then the year before, how often they lost time of possession, put their defense right back on the field. Time of possession, I think, tells one time. If you're going out and you're only having 5 plays on offense each drive, but that's because you're scoring and it's 5 plays, 75 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, you'll take it.
You don't care at all about time. But if you're South Carolina last year, way too many 3-and-outs, way too many situations where you're on the field, then you're right back off the field by not scoring. So I think for them, keeping that defense sort of rested, where last year you just felt the defense just got worn down as the year went on. So I think certainly for them is very important. Dude, you play DB, right?
Special teams player of the week, too.
Conference, yeah.
Any
10, man. They say it's like the SEC of the North.
Sure. Yeah. Who's they? Who says that?
No assumption. Go Greyhounds.
Uva does. But no, so I can't imagine they were asking you necessarily to play man coverage against many guys as big as Pitts.
Well, they weren't telling me to play man off, and I was his own guy lately.
But
yeah, I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
defensive background. Let's say a lot of times safeties, I think, are going to have to guard this guy. Now, they do. I was talking earlier. They split him out. They move him around.
Yep.
Sometimes a corner is matched up with him. Sometimes a poor linebacker gets left on him. How do you manage this guy in coverage? And I think, like we were talking about earlier for Carolina, part of it is just you're going to give him as many different looks as possible. But physically, how do you cover a guy with this size and this speed?
I mean, you have two great corners, but the way I would approach it, and I don't know how Coach Muschamp's going to approach it, anytime Pitts is out, spread out wide, right, and he's the number one receiver. One being one on the outside, everything in. If he's the number one receiver, I'm putting Mukuamu on him. And the main reason why is because I want to have someone that's a little bit lengthy on him in terms of just being able to create that more of a matchup that is favorable in your, if he's inside, I like J.C. Horn a little bit better because I think Horn has a little, better hips than Mukuamu. And it's just a little bit different in terms of
a little more physical at the point of attack.
Exactly. So I think, if he's going to be on the outside, and I don't know how Muschamp approaches his defense, but sometimes, you'll see a guy, he'll basically just be a boundary corner. And wherever the field is, he's always going to be on the short side of the field. Or, sometimes you'll see, you'll put a guy just basically just shadowing him the entire time. To me, it would make more sense to shadow Pitts with Mukuamu if he's on the outside. But, like you said, you got to continue just to be different. And I love that quote that Muschamp had on Tuesday, which is, playing defense is like, being in war. If you stay in the same spot over and over, eventually you're going to get blown up. And one of the things that they did so well last year against Georgia is they just kept changing things up. They kept making things difficult for Fromm. If they could do that against Trask, I think it's going to make things difficult for Pitts to get in the rhythm and just the whole offense to be able to get the rhythm that we saw last week against Ole Miss.
Well, I think Trask, the thing he does so well is He's not extending the play to run. He's extending to keep his eyes downfield, and he just crushes team. I mean, even last year there was a sequence, and this, I think if you go back, this is where Florida took over the game. There was a sequence when they're in South Carolina territory, and he had a 3rd and long. Carolina gets pressure. Trask escapes. I think he actually did run on this one, but got just enough to make it a more makeable 4th down. Mullen, who can be pretty aggressive, he leaves the offense on the field. Next play, Kinlaw gets tackled from behind, by the way. Gets held. Not that you expect them to ever call anything on Javon Kinlaw last year, it seemed like. As many times he got held. Trask there rolls away from him. Everybody's covered on the initial rhythm of the play, right?
Yep.
But then Trask, he's rolling to his left, and he just like shot puts the ball. Coverage is right there.
Yeah.
Florida receiver makes, and then I swear I think it's the very next play. He hits that sort of deep wheel route where the DB, the receiver has a step on the DB. Touchdown catch. Florida goes up by 4 in a game South Carolina had controlled, I would say, for most of that contest. So I think Trask, it's getting pressure on him, but then it's also finding a way to sort of contain him as you get pressure on him. And also, speaking of the way Muschamp said things, I loved how he was like, you have to cover these guys twice. And it's not good enough just to have them covered for that first 2.5 to 3 seconds when he's taking his drop. You got to stay with him,
flushes out
while this guy's moving around.
And that's why I think if you're able to put some pressure on him, don't be shocked, because even though he has a great arm, don't be shocked to see them play some zone. The reason why is when you play man coverage and he starts to roll out, even though 9 times out of 10 he's not really trying to extend the plays with his feet in terms of just being able to run. He's trying to extend it in terms of being able to have, like you said, guys are covered up as receivers,
and they come back to the ball.
And they come back to the ball. It's kind of just playing like street ball. So point being is when you're in zone coverage, you're able to see the quarterback. You're able to keep everything in front of you. The difficult thing about that is there's also that creates some of the holes, but you got to be doing I know it's cliche to say as a coach or a player, your 111th. You have to do your 111th. And in the secondary, South Carolina struggled to do that last week when they played zone coverages, and you were able to just see, the QB just being able to hit some of those spots, those soft openings. So if you're able to play zone and you're able to keep everything in front of you, it does make things a little bit more difficult in comparison to man, because when you do play man and he's able to roll out, if you just screw up, that's where a lot of those explosive plays are going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what we saw with Ole Miss last week. So don't be shocked to see South Carolina go with a lot of zone, but they have to be able to get the pressure going, especially if they're only going to be sending 4.
And I saw we had a comment about that earlier, that South Carolina got bounced out of their gaps. It's not the secondary, but on that first play in the second half, they did get bounced out of a lot of their run gaps, and it looked like at times guys were trying to do too much.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just human nature at times. If you're a defensive end and you see the ball go to the right and you're on the left, you tend to skew that way. And, if you're a defensive end and you're rushing upfield, you can't get too far up against Florida, because then that creates a gap for Trask to shoot through. And I think that's a big thing. If you're JJ Eningbare or Aaron Sterling, you can't get too far upfield, because that gives Trask a few more lanes to run through and extend the play. So you have to maintain that pocket, but still, push it into where he's not comfortable, and you can get some sacks on him.
And that's something in a way to be able to compare it, because you won't see it on. If you're watching the game, unless you're paying attention to the defensive line, you're not really noticing that, unless maybe you're a coach. Best way to describe it is just think about kickoffs, right? When you see a guy, and it usually happens just like this. A guy will muff the punt or muff a kick, right? And what happens? Everyone gets out of their lane integrity. And that's when you see things start to break out to the outside. It's the same thing. Same exact thing for a defensive line. People try to just do too much, and this week you just can't. You have to do what you got to do in terms of being able to do your 111th. When you have some of the younger guys, that's what I worry about the most. You got talent in Jordan Burch and Pickens and stuff, but now it's like, hey, look, you get by your guy, trust what we're telling you to do. Don't try to do too much, because if he bounces things outside, that's what they want, and that's where the explosive plays happen.
Or if you tell Zach Pickens or Alex Huntley, if he could play, or Tonka Hemingway, hey, we need you to take on this double team.
Do it.
Hold on to it. That way we can have Ernest Jones or Damani Staley,
someone else.
that'll blitz. Then then you have to do that if you're a Zach Pickens. Or
You
if you're
got to be the
someone
traffic cone.
Yeah.
Sometimes
For
you got to
someone,
be the
yeah.
traffic cone. Some people don't like being the traffic cone because the traffic cone don't get any love, you
Right.
know? But if you're the traffic cone, you take on those two guys, it's going to, like you said, it's going to open up something.
Yeah, and that's what I think South Carolina has to do. You have to be creative with how you pressure Trask.
Yep.
He has to not know where you're coming from, whether that's a stunt, whether that's a, switching and having Aaron Sterling pinch in and, a Zach Pickens roll out to the side. So there are things you can do, and it's just a matter of having guys do, like you said, their 111 to get it done.
And we're going to give the traffic cone some love
Yes.
here on the show. I think we need a traffic cone of the week.
I like
Traffic cone. So this goes back to in college.
it. You play college ball?
Yes, I don't like saying it like that though. But one of my teammates, he got very upset because he felt like he's like,
He got no love?
He's like, I feel like I'm a freaking traffic cone out here. He's like, you have him doing everything. Why don't you have me do something, huh? I feel like I'm a traffic cone out here. So I just love that. That's where I got that from.
I like traffic cone of the week
Traffic
coming up
cone of the
next
week.
week. It sounds like it could be a negative thing, but it actually is going to be a very positive thing here on the show. So do keep it positive. I do think, and we're about up on the end of the show here, but some very correctable things on both sides for South.
Mm-hmm.
Some of what y'all are talking about, like trying to do too much up front. Some of that is game one stuff because you get so excited, so juiced up, so ready to make a play, and then it maybe takes coach being able to go back this week and say, hey, man, look at what you did right here.
Yep.
This is what we're talking about in practice. Now take this to the game field, And I think offensively, even though they scored more than I expected offensively last week, had a few more explosive plays than maybe I expected. But the thing I think we're going to see be way more successful for South Carolina moving forward is the screen game because they did not have a lot of success in the screen game this past week. But you look everywhere else Bobo's been, screens are a huge part of what they do, for one thing. And two, if you look back, if you slow motion a lot of those screens that went for nothing, it's one guy who doesn't get to his spot and make a block. And a screen is kind of all or nothing. It's not really a play that a lot of times goes for
6 yards. And you're done.
It's generally like you almost move the line of scrimmage and the offense is trying to get to a spot. The defense, if they spot it, they're trying to get to that spot. And if the defense blows it up, it's either nothing or a negative play, or it springs out and you have 10 yards or more in a first down. For Carolina, they were always this close, but they were on the wrong side of that. I think those things will spring for them as the year goes on. They get a little more comfortable. They gel. It's a timing play almost, I think. So some of that will be something I would be watching this week for South Carolina because I think long-term they have to have those screens. They're never going to be – they don't have the receivers that they're just going to pick teams apart like maybe a Florida can.
Mm-hmm.
So hitting the screen plays and having some success from those areas of their game, I think will be big for them this week and moving forward. Do you give predictions? Or are you?
I can do it if you want me to give you a prediction.
Have you thought about a prediction?
No, I can think of.
We talked yesterday. We haven't talked.
I know it's not going to be the greatest prediction because I'm not giving an actual score, but I truly believe if South Carolina can hold Florida under 35 points, I feel like they can win this game. And I know that sounds crazy to say, and I cover both Clemson and USC, so I feel like I try to be as unbiased as possible. I truly believe that South Carolina, can win this game. And the reason being is because I feel like some people are buying into Florida too much. I feel like I know we only have 1 week to work off of because Florida's going to probably show some improvements too from week 1 to week 2. But I just feel like that Florida team show that they are beatable. They are beatable. That offense is good, but I don't know how good they really are. And then from a defensive standpoint, they just have a lot of question marks.
I mean, South Carolina hasn't scored 30 points, though, in a while.
Well, they haven't had Mike Bobo for a while either.
There you go. I was about to
We're
say.
staying positive here.
I was about to say.
Stretch the field early, though.
They'll read ours on Gamecock Central. That is a free article,
Yes.
the game day guide. So anybody that's on here can read it. Game day guide, look for that. It'll be posted tomorrow morning or maybe even probably midnight tonight before I go to bed.
Getting wild.
Getting wild on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Here at Market on Main. All right, where can we find you on Twitter again? I just want to hear you say _. Again.
Yeah.
And I'll really drop it for you. That's it. Mike _UVA.
He's Mike Uva. Watch Fox Hour. We got to do this again, man.
I'm more than happy, man.
Make this a planned thing. This was not planned.
No, I literally just showed up.
It was cool. He's Collyn Taylor. We had Chris Clark on earlier. Appreciate Market on Main for hosting us here. Get your tickets to their watch party. Early game tomorrow, so y'all got to get out of bed, get down here, brunch, booze, football, big screen.
They got good brunch.
They got great brunch.
They got good brunch,
Yeah.
man.
So I mean, that's what people in Columbia like the most. I don't know what order it is
Brunch and booze
in football.
in football.
Depending on the day, I don't know
Yeah.
the order. But
When I moved to Mississippi, they told me they said the most 3 important things in the South, 3 F's, and I'm like, what that? And I don't know if it's necessarily the order, but I think like it was faith, football, family, so something like that.
and alcohol.
And alcohol.
And alcohol.
In Columbia,
fermented.
Yeah, throw another
in,
trying to win.
in this town, definitely alcohol.
Yeah.
All right. I know I'm saying we're leaving, but I almost forgot something. So Mullen, you said you covered him in Mississippi. He came up with your "Don't touch that."
Don't touch that clicker. Mullen was the guy who essentially came up with that. It was like, I don't know what they call it for South Carolina if they do anything. It's like when they travel for like their, it was called the Road Dog Tour. So they go all across the state, basically get people to help
Carolina
donate
has that.
and boosters, all that kind of stuff. And he walked in and I said to him, hey, Coach Levitt says he's sorry that he pulled you with 19 points your senior year of high school basketball. He would have left you in if he knew you were going to get 20. And he's like, because everyone's yelling at him. He's like, how do you know, Joe Levitt? And, back then he had the fake Southern accent. Always I give him a hard time about. Now it's all gone.
Yeah.
He's a New Hampshire guy. He doesn't have a Southern accent. But we just started talking. He sat with me and he's like, and I told him, I said, I'm trying to fade my accent away. He's like, man, you should embrace it at times. He's like, maybe say something about like, don't touch in the clucker or something. So then that's where it came about. So Dan Mullen is the guy that came essentially up with don't touch that clicker. Yep.
Have y'all stayed in touch over the years?
I did see him after the Florida game last year. We talked briefly. But he's a good guy. I liked him.
And has done really well there. I mean, let's be honest.
Even when he was there though with just being the quarterback's coach, when Cam Newton was there and Tebow, and I know Cam Newton was there for a cup of coffee, but you know what I mean. They had some good quarterback play over there.
And I think a lot of respect. You can tell this week Muschamp has a lot of respect for Mullen as an offensive mind.
And that's not just coach talk, which we usually Kirby Smart just talked about it earlier this week. You hear a lot of coach talk. That's not coach
talk. That's genuine respect for him and Todd Graham.
Yep. But I think the other side, Mullen does respect Muschamp and the defensive mind and what he does. It's going to be a cool chess match to watch. We're out of time. Come out to Market on Main. Thanks to AffordableMedicalUSA.com, our primary sponsor. For Collyn, for Mike, I'm Wes. We'll see you all soon.